Welcome to another edition of the Georgia Workers' Compensation video series. My name is Jason Perkins. I'm a Georgia Workers' Compensation attorney. In this series, I provide you with helpful information about Georgia's workers' compensation law. Today, I want to talk to you about pre-existing conditions under Georgia's workers' compensation law and how they can be aggravated and exacerbated and how workers' compensation covers those conditions. But before we jump into that, be sure and be on the lookout for my upcoming video in this series about back injuries and their coverage under Georgia workers' compensation law. Now let's talk about pre-existing conditions. Pre-existing condition is probably a term that you've heard when you're talking about health insurance or some other area of the law. Basically, it means any condition that you had before a certain date and time. In workers' compensation, the date and time that we're looking at when we talk about pre-existing conditions is the date that your injury occurred at work. So if your injury occurred January 1st, 2017, then pre-existing conditions would be any conditions that you had prior to that injury date. So if you already had a back condition before that injury, then that back condition would be a pre-existing condition. If you had an injury to your hand or to your shoulder beforehand, then those might be pre-existing conditions as well. The question that comes up a lot, and let's go back to the back condition example, is if you had a back condition which you treated about prior to your injury, or you treated for prior to your injury, would you be able, if you injured your back at work, to receive workers' compensation benefits for that back injury? And the answer under Georgia law is yes, you can. Even though you had a prior back condition, you can still suffer additional injury and receive workers' compensation benefits for that injury. In many instances, that injury is what's called an aggravation of a pre-existing condition. And what Georgia law says is that even though you had that pre-existing condition, that if your injury at work made it worse or caused you additional injury, then the insurance company has to pay for that. Now, they are only responsible for paying for the aggravation. If at some point they can prove that your injury returns to what many people refer to as baseline, which means that it gets back to the pre-existing condition where it was before, and the aggravation injury is no longer there, then they get off the hook at that point. Now, one thing that can also happen if you have pre-existing conditions is you could suffer a completely separate injury. So you might have a pre-existing condition in your back, and then you suffer an injury to your back at work, and it's a completely separate part of your back. So it's really not a pre-existing condition or aggravation of pre-existing condition at all. It's a completely new injury. And this, in that case, would be treated like a new injury. You don't really have an aggravation, you just have an injury in and of itself. So when you have pre-existing conditions, you really need to look at, was that pre-existing condition aggravated by the injury or activities that you did at work, or was it a completely new injury in and of itself, because those are going to be treated differently. I hope you found the information in this video today helpful. If you have, the best way to let me know that is by liking this video or giving it a thumbs up. If you have more questions or want more information about Georgia workers' compensation law, I'd recommend that you visit our Perkins Studdard Workers' Compensation YouTube channel. All the videos from the Georgia Workers' Compensation video series are there, and you can subscribe to be notified of future videos. You can also visit our website, www.perkinslawtalk.com, read articles about workers' compensation on our blog there, or if you have some specific